Okay, hello. Welcome to another Zoom group. If you're watching this on video, we're going to do a meditation to start. So if you want to skip the meditation, you can just go forward about 15, 20 minutes. But, you know, you're very welcome to do the meditation. It's quite open to you, but I'm just giving you the heads up that if you just want to hear the talking bit, it'll be forward. Okay, so the meditation we're going to do is focusing on communication. And we almost started before we close our eyes, because I just want you to take note of whatever environment that you're in. You know, so maybe you're in a room, maybe there's some sort of device in front of you, a phone or computer or tablet, and you're watching the video, you can see me and you can hear my voice. So that's one aspect of the communication. In a way, that's the kind of eyes open dimension of the communication. Now, before we close our eyes and get into it, I don't like to get into a special meditative position. I just like to close my eyes. I like to just see where my body is at, because if I just get into a special meditative position, I'll miss where my body is actually at. Because it nearly always happens that when I close my eyes, and you can close your eyes now if you're watching or you're here, as soon as I do that, I immediately am aware of different tensions that are in my body that I wasn't aware of before. So I'd miss that if I got into a special position. So if you're new to meditation, then it's a good way to sort of become more conscious of your body is to scan your body from your head to your feet slowly, gently, and then back up again. Keep going up and down. And that is a little bit like shining a torch in the dark. So you can, and the torch is quite close to the thing that you're shining it on, which is your body. As you get better at meditation, it's almost like the torch gets a little bit further away, so you can see more and more of your body all at the same time until you can sort of see it all. So if you're familiar with meditation and you just close your eyes, what will happen is the part of you that, you know, the part of your body that is the most uncomfortable will probably try and get your attention first. So I'll just draw your attention to a few different areas that can get tight in people's bodies. Straight away, the first one that comes up is usually, or can be, shoulders. Particularly these days when we are a little bit more on our phones, in front of computers, a little bit hunched over. Your shoulders can hold a lot of tension. And our shoulders are one of the good areas you can scrunch them up and then drop them. You can make them a bit tighter to help them release. And all the time when you're doing this, it's always good to keep your breath going, to not lose focus on your breath, or to not lose your breath. Because as you get into different things, like if you put your attention on your shoulders and you're like, oh yeah, it's very tight, you can use your breath to release it, particularly your out breath. Just as a general kind of thing in breathing when you're meditating. I mean, generally it's a good thing to do anyway, but when you're meditating, if you let your out breath or your exhalation be a little bit longer than your inhalation, so moving on from your shoulders, it's a natural kind of progression up into your neck to see how your neck is feeling. So your neck and your shoulders can be linked in that kind of tension dynamic. And you can bunch your neck up again and drop it if you want to try and help it. You can breathe away any tension you find there. You can make little sort of circles with your nose, making them bigger if you want. Finding tension in your neck, helping it. Have a look at your eyes, how your eyes, can be a lot of tension in your eyes. Spend a lot of the day looking. So all the different little muscles involved in your eyes, they're always in motion, they're always working out, even with your eyes closed. And you can see this if you have with your eyes closed, if you sort of turn your head from side to side very slightly, very gently, your eyes will still kind of look forward. They'll still be working. But when your eyes are closed, and when your eyelids are closed, you can, and you turn your head from side to side, you can get a sense of the tensions, different tensions around your eyes. And again, you can breathe them away or encourage them to become a bit softer. From your eyes there, you can travel up a little bit to the center of your forehead. The sensation is a bit more subtle there, but as you breathe into it, you can begin to get a sense of it releasing. It can be linked to your eyebrows. We can do a lot of talking with our eyebrows throughout the day, and tension can build up in that kind of area and then up into that center of your forehead. And leave that now and go down to the heart area, your heart area. Again, it can be hard to feel sensation there. So what I do is I think of the pericardium, the bag that my heart sits in. And I think about it expanding and getting bigger and allowing more space for my heart. Now, something about when I do that, I can get more of a sensation of my heart. I get more of a sensation of it expanding. Heart is a remarkable area in your body, physiologically, but also energetically. Your heart is like a field generator. And the more you put your attention on expanding your heart and the energy of your heart, the bigger the field that it generates. So it's a lovely thing to do. Your abdomen is another area that can hold a lot of tension. So if you put your attention in your abdomen, the abdomen is always somewhere that feels like it's can keep relaxing. You can put your attention on it and relax it, then there'll be more. You can let it go more, let it go more. Let your belly flop. There's a lot of infoldings in your abdomen, in the fascia that holds all the organs and your intestines. So there's plenty of places to tuck tension in there. I think that's why you can keep letting it go and keep letting it go and keep letting it go. And there's lots of different sides to it, meaning there's the top of your abdomen underneath your respiratory diaphragm. That has its own measure of tensions. And then you can travel down deeper, midsection, around your navel or your umbilicus, and then down into your pelvic floor area. Pelvic floor often feels very vulnerable. It needs to be approached gently. It's not one of those areas that responds well to being commanded to relax. It's almost like you just have to be with it. And as you're with it, it can open up. There can be a lot of trauma in this area, toilet training, being the first, and then on from there. So it's a part of us that is held. We learn to hold it very young. So it can be reluctant to let go, which is why I'm saying not to try and get it to relax, but just to be with it. And just by being with it, it begins to ease. So now if you bring your attention to the sensation in your hands, if you notice the difference between the sensation in the front of your hands and the back of your hands, and if your hands are joined together, you could just kind of separate them. You can put them on your thighs or your knees or whatever. Just notice the difference between the sensation in the front of your hands and the back of your hands. And all this time we've been meditating, we've been in our inner space, we've been pulling back from the shell of our body, as it were. And in inner space, things are more fluid and not as rigid as they appear in the outside. So on the inside, for example, when you just let go of the idea of the shape of what your hands should be like and just feel what the sensation is like, you can feel that the sensation on the front part of your hand feels a lot bigger than the sensation on the back of your hand. So the shape of your hand on the inside, as defined by the sensation of it, is different. We're not going to do this now, but you can do this on your own in your meditation, you can go into that whole idea much more deeply, where you can let your feet be where your feet actually are. The sensation of your feet, they may not be down there, they might be up higher. The sensation in your head might be lower down. Everything is much more fluid inside an inner space. And time and space operate differently here. We're just going to see that now in a minute, because if you just take a good snapshot, if you like, mental snapshot of what the sensation in your hands feels like, good reference point. And then we're going to add to the communication. We're going to start with me. So if you reach your hands out on either side of you, as if you were trying to reach out to touch me, to connect with me, and just holding that sensation in your hands, and then see if there's something else there. So you have the reference for what I have sort of, the reference for what your hands felt like. And now you've included the intention that you want to connect with me. We're just starting with me. We're going to add to it, but we'll start with me. And if you're watching the video, you can do this too. And as I said, time and space operate differently. But it's possible to connect with me. Now, if your mind kicks in and goes, hang on a second, how could I be connecting with him? I'm in this country, he's in another country, whatever. You can just, don't get into a fight with your mind about that. Don't try and convince your mind of anything. You just say, can I have a good think about that later? Right now, I just want to feel the sensation. I want to just feel the sensation in my hands as I referenced it when my hands were just on my lap. Now I just want to see if I feel something else. That something else will be me. And if you're familiar with this, if you've done this a few times, you don't have to limit it to your hands. You can allow that sensation to travel up your arms, be part of your body as well. And now see if you can include the other people in the group. It'll be similar. It'll be the reference of your own sensation of your own hands, and there'll be me, and there'll be other people. Again, try and keep your mind as uninvolved in this as possible. So if it wants to talk about how could I be doing this? There's people all around the world. What does that mean? Just say, yep, that's all. They're all valid points. Can I think about that later? I just want to be with the sensation now. And similarly, don't allow your mind to imagine what the sensation is like, because your mind can go very quickly, can very quickly imagine things, which is different to what you actually feel in your hands or your body. And how you'll know the difference is your mind can go to a place very quickly, whereas connecting like this, it sort of slowly dawns on you. Similarly, if you're watching the video, you can connect with the people in the group as well. Because as I say, time and space operate differently here, behind the scenes. And for the people in the group here, you can connect with, you can include now everyone who's going to watch the video. Same if your mind gets involved in that, just make a little arrangement to think about it later. Just go with the feeling. all the time you're expanding the depth of your communication, or the communication that's available. Similarly, if you're watching the video, you can connect with everybody here. You can connect with me. You can connect with all the people who watched the video before you and all the people who are going to watch the video. This is the place where very deep connection happens. It's the place where, when people talk about, having a deep realization, and they say, oh, we're all one, whether that realization came from, a 40-day fast, or an ayahuasca ceremony, or some sort of drug induced thing, or just happened naturally. Everyone described it in a similar kind of way. I looked at the tree and the tree looked at me, and there was no difference between me or the tree. We were one. Or I looked at that old lady and she looked at me, and I could see that there was no difference between us. We were all connected. Or I looked at the ocean looked back at me, and I could see we were one. Where you register that, where that person, whoever they are talking about, where they will have registered that, is here where you are now, behind the scenes. That's where this communication is. It's where this connection is. The person didn't merge with the tree, or they didn't merge with the old lady or the sea. Where they knew that connection was here, where you are, and what we're doing now. This feeling of, it's not feeling, it's a knowledge of connection. So the great thing is that there's always friendly energies to connect to. There's always someone to connect to. You're never alone, because you've just added this great depth of communication, added this great depth to the communication. The communication that you had when your eyes are open, that's still there. But now you've just added this other dimension to it. And you can do this on your own. You can connect, you can help the world, you can help all the people, you can reach out. It's not a small thing. Okay, we're going to begin to finish the meditation now. So if you're new to meditation and you can have a feeling of travel, like you can feel like you've gone very deeply inside. If you have that, and as I say, if you're new to meditation, then take a bit of time to come back, travel back along that road before you open your eyes, because it can be a bit disorienting if you don't. If you're more experienced with meditation, you can head towards just being able to open your eyes and hold the inner space and the outer space at the same time. And if that's new for you, what can happen is you'll have this good connection with your inner space, then you open your eyes, and as soon as you do, you're sort of sucked out of your eyeballs into the eyes open world. And you can feel like, oh, I lost the connection with the inner space. If that happens, just close your eyes again, reconnect. Oh yeah, there it is. Then open your eyes again. Oh, no, lost it again. Close your eyes and go back and forth. Use your eyes like a valve to find equilibrium between inner space and outer space. Because meditation, for me anyway, it's not an abstract thing. It's not a conceptual thing. It's a very vital, living thing and practical thing that I bring into every moment, every day. The times when I'm just very consciously meditating, are in a way, I'm going into the mystery, but then through doing that repeatedly, you sort of bring the mystery up into your life, and you can eventually you can be in what would be called a deeply meditative state, with your eyes open, having a conversation with somebody. It's all possible. Okay, so I'm gonna assume you've got your eyes open, so, or are on the way to having your eyes open. So hello again, if you skip forward in the video to the Zoom group. As I say at the beginning of all these Zoom groups, the time of the guru is over. The time of the spiritual teacher is over. Just like the time of the celebrity is over. They just haven't realized it yet. But from the main thing is the spiritual teacher and guru side of things. Evolution has kind of got to the point now in consciousness where, as Ram Dass says, we're all helping each other home. Or as Thich Nhat Hanh said, the next Buddha will be the community. Well, the next Buddha is here. We're the community. So I say that because it's important. It's important that there's no sense of that I have got any, that I'm doing any kind of teaching. I'm not, or that I think that my knowledge and my experience is the ultimate knowledge and experience. I don't think it is. I think it's just my perspective. I think it's my experience and my perspective on things, and very much feel that we are all helping each other home. If I say something that's of help to you, that's great, but you will say things that are of help to me just equally. So I like to talk about the sorts of things that the people in the group are interested in, or are of concern to them, or if they have any questions. So I much rather talk about what's going on for you than whatever I might have that it's coming up for me to say. So does anybody have any questions or anything they want to share or anything like that? I'll leave a bit of time for that because I know from experience it can be a bit nerve-wracking. Feel free to text in and stuff as well. Like, don't feel like you have to, get on the microphone or anything like that. But yeah, I know from experience being in similar situations that it can take a while. There can be a feeling of like, is someone else going to talk? Oh, maybe I'll say something. Okay. Oh, hang on. Good. Hello.
I have a quick question. Hi, John.
Hi, Sandy.
I have just a kind of a reflective question. I appreciate the meditation, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about your teaching about the parts of ourselves, and I can see when I'm in a part or in a separated or a contracted piece, and I'm really learning how to identify that, and I'm very grateful for that teaching. And this past week, I've encountered those parts teaming up. They'll say, "Hey, we're going to get together," and six of them are going to, and I do feel that overwhelm, and and I've gone into places where I just don't know if I can manage with all these parts, and I do get small, and so just the reminder of that when I see myself in the tree, what I'm seeing is that we're coming from the same place. It's the animating force that's holding us, and that's always available. And I find that so easy to forget and so quickly to, I don't know if you have any words of wisdom to share on maybe some tactical practices on just reminding ourselves that even when, even till some of the influences feel insurmountably contractive, there's a place we can go and resource from. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'm sort of reluctant because it's very like it's hard to or it's what you want to try and avoid is arriving at any kind of certainty, because what will happen is
Mhm.
what'll work today won't work tomorrow, and then the feeling of like it's almost worse. So you sort of feel bad, and then you try something and it works, and you go, great, finally. And then the next day something else happens, and you try the thing you tried yesterday and it doesn't work. You almost feel worse than you did on the first day, because now it's like, oh god, that doesn't work. Because the thing is, we change so much. Like, we change, and we're always changing. But what I take a lot of comfort from is that the parts of me that want something, that want some kind of, here's this spanner that will always work inside. I can always use this thing, and it'll always work. That part of me is not the part of me that's running that particular uh, the show in terms of growth of consciousness. There's a much deeper part that doesn't really talk much, if at all, and it is running the show. So there'll be times where I'll completely forget, completely forget all my cool little tricks for how to handle things, and I'll be forlorn, and I'll be bereft, and I'll be depressed, and then suddenly the sun will come out on the inside, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, right. And it's like, well, where did that come from? Where did the sun come from? And it's like, well, it's that part. There is a deeper part running the show. So if I feel that kind of feeling of overwhelm, as you said, um, that and I am getting into tricks and tips here, but the thing I have found always works for me with overwhelm is to think of it like a tornado or a hurricane. And that when I'm overwhelmed, that for me at this stage now, the trick is to register that I'm overwhelmed. And I've got better at that. That's the hardest bit. But once I know I'm overwhelmed, once I feel it, I go, oh, hang on, I'm overwhelmed. Then what I do is like the visual I have is that I sit down in the center of the hurricane, because at the center of the hurricane, it's peaceful and it's all going on around me. Okay. And I know that all I have to do is sit down in there and just be as still as I can. And it's almost like, it's not like a huge 2 mile wide hurricane. It's like very close, it's right beside me. And it's almost like, if in terms of thoughts, it's like my thought is like a hand that I reach out, as soon as I touch it, I'm sucked into it. And then I'm back into like being overwhelmed. So whether the hurricane, regardless of what it's about, what's overwhelmed, like as you were saying, it can feel like there's 6 different nasty parts of you on the inside, and they've all ganged up, and if that's the hurricane that's going on, how I would get sucked into the hurricane would be thinking about, well, how am I going to deal with this, or what am I going to do, or hearing one part of me kind of going, oh, you're this, you're full of shit or whatever, and I'm going, oh, that's right, yeah, I'm full of shit. Then I'm into the hurricane, okay. Or you're never going to sort this out, like, oh, that's right, I'm never going to start. Then I'm into the hurricane. So what I do is just try and be really still and have that feeling of I'm overwhelmed. So all I can do when I'm overwhelmed is wait for it to pass, because the great thing is it does pass. And what I've found is by doing that, by just being really still, it passes quicker than if I keep trying to, address all these different, things that have caused the hurricane. So I've found that it's not easy to do by any stretch, because the things in the hurricane will be very compelling. They'll really, they'd be emotional, and there'll be pain, and it's not like I'm sitting in the middle of the hurricane, feeling all beautiful and holy or anything like that. I'll probably be in pain, emotional pain, and sometimes quite a lot of it. But the energy of it, of just being like, if I can register, oh yeah, I'm overwhelmed, and then I can just be as still as I can with that, and just be with it, be with the pain if it's there, but just be still, as still as I can, having this idea of I'm overwhelmed, it's a hurricane, I'm not going to try and sort anything out or do anything to rectify it. I'm just going to wait for the hurricane to pass. that it does pass. So I find that very helpful to think of it like that. And with it's a sort of a variation on that, on what I just said there, but with the parts ganging up, like the part of me that feels overwhelmed is just another part, you know. There's always this overarching presence that's completely unaffected by all that stuff. Okay. And it almost doesn't feel like me because it's such a deep part of me. It's that kind of silent witness part of me. It's the part of me that when I'm meditating and I'm sort of turning off the pictures and turning off the sound, I'm stopping myself thinking. It's kind of that part. It's that presence that's there beyond everything, you know, because there's a meditation you can do. It's great to do it actually, where you sort of have this imaginary bag, and you put you start off by putting your you know your you start off with a small possession, your favorite possession. You put it in the bag, then you put another possession in the bag, then you start putting all your possessions in the bag, and this magic bag that gets bigger and bigger. It doesn't get bigger, but it can take more and more. Then you're putting your house in the bag, you're putting your neighborhood in the bag, you put everything in the bag, the planet Earth, all the solar system, you put everything in the bag, and finally you put your body in the bag, right? And then you've put everything that you can think of, you put it in the bag, right? And then the bag gets smaller and smaller and smaller, disappears, right? And depending on where you're at, like, so some people can find that very moving to when that happens, particularly if you put your kids in the bag and you put your husband and wife in the bag, and all everything goes in the bag till there's nothing, and then it disappears, right? But the beautiful thing is that there's something left. There's still you. There's a presence there, there's a presence there that's still left, and that's the presence that's kind of above all that stuff, And in a way, that's the place, that the part of me that I can rest in when there's conflict and turmoil. Because even the part of me that sort of feels as if the other parts are ganging up on me, like, that's just the same. It's just another part of me. It's all part of the same thing. So I don't get into a fight with them. I don't try and go, stop now. Can you all stop picking on me? And can you stop saying bad things about me, whatever, because I kind of know that as soon as those words come out of my mouth or come out of my brain or whatever, that's just another part, that I come back as much as I can to a sense of that presence of watching it all, I think I talked about the analogy of being in a cinema before, like the person in the front row of the cinema is me, right? So I'm there and I've got my nose pressed up against the screen, looking out of my eyes into my life, It's the part of me that's talking to you now, that part of me, fully engaged, have to handle all the consequences and make all the explanations and try and find the right words and all that kind of thing. But then there's another person behind that person, another me watching me doing that. And then there'll be another person in the row behind that again, observing the person that's observing, so there'll be me, observing me, observing me. And it keeps going back like that. It goes back into the dark, which is the mystery. So if it gets a bit chaotic inside, I will just try and come back, as far as I can, and tread lightly with the whole thing, and be as gentle with all the different warring factions on the inside as I can. So I don't know if that's
Thank you.
of
That's
any.
beautiful. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything about that or anything else? All right. So something that's been occurring to me a little bit is the idea of being a hermit. Like not that, like particularly the archetype of the hermit. Like if you think about um, from the spiritual point of view, you know, like the person goes off and lives in a cave on their own. And I mean, I'm sure there are people who are doing that right now, but that idea is quite at odds with the way our lives are set up now. You know, we're very social, we've got social media, and you know, even though we're all kind of locked down in different ways, or different variations of being locked down. And this last year has been a lot to do with isolation. You know, one of the things that people are finding very hard is the isolation, is the lack of contact. So the idea of being a hermit is kind of the complete opposite of that. But what's been in my mind is that the very things that we want, you know, connection with other people, communication, love, you know, with the partner or with other people, with our kids, or, you know, all these beautiful connections, they're actually all enhanced by having the mentality of a hermit. So what I mean is, I don't mean you have to go off and live in a cave. I think those days are gone. But the mentality of a hermit is more to do with being okay with being on your own, and seeing the value of going into your own space, the space of who you are and what you are, and not just tolerating it and putting up with it. You're just waiting for the love of your life to come along, or you're waiting for your kids to show up, or you're waiting for friendships or whatever. But sort of resting in the knowledge that you came into the world on your own, and you'll go out of the world on your own. Even if you're surrounded by your loved ones as you die and you have a real Hollywood kind of death, the process, you'll go on your own. It's like sleep, you know. I know I talk about sleep a lot, but you know, we go to sleep on our own. Even if you're lying beside somebody in bed, you'll still the process is on your own. And that's what I mean about being okay, and being not just okay with it, but like going, yeah, there's many aspects to this experience that are solo, that are just completely just my own experience. And it's lovely to share experiences with people, and that's great and everything. But the more willing you can be to settle into that sense of, or that way of thinking about things of, as a hermit, and it's almost like you're an undercover hermit because you're mixing with people and chatting and whatever, but inside you're not doing it. It's like you're not doing it to make yourself feel better. You know, it's like you're not eating the cake of companionship. You know, like if companionship was a cake, you're like, oh, I want to have more cake, lots more cake. I just want to keep eating cake. And if I can't have cake, I'm upset. You know, that it's almost like you can be with people, be around people, but not, and still be apart, but not aloof. But you sort of still have the mentality of a hermit who's communing with God within and without, and very serious about that and very deeply into that, and still be talking to people and being with them. That's what the main kind of thrust of what's been on my mind is, that it's ironic that the things that we want in terms of other people, communion, connection, friendship, the more of a mentality of a hermit that you can have, the more enriching those connections will be. So that was one thing. Anybody have any comments or questions about that?
I'm enjoying very much listening. Just want to say that to you for the
Oh,
feedback.
thanks.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, the other thing that's been on my mind a little bit, when I say on my mind, I don't really mean in my mind. It sort of comes up in meditation, and then my mind wraps some words around it, some ideas around it. It's to do with kids actually at the moment, and what it must be like for children just right now, you know, because I think about how formative my childhood was. And hang on a second, someone's saying something. The last point, that our connections will be richer with the undercover hermit posture. Can you go into more details with richer? Oh, okay. So let me just back up a bit then. Well, it depends on where you're coming from with having connections with people. Like if you want to be with somebody because you have a gaping hole inside you and you want that person to fill it, for example, which is what a lot of people do, then your relationship with that person is always going to be fraught, because it's coming from a place of you want something from that person. And when you are in a relationship with somebody and you want something from them, doesn't matter what, it makes things tight, and they will feel taken from a little bit. And then, you know, and then of course, if they're doing exactly the same thing back to you, well, then you'll feel a little bit tight towards them as well. And then off we go into human relationships. But so if you go into this mentality of being a hermit, and you know, hermit's just the word. What I mean is, if you go into the aloneness of existence, like if you really sit with that, and you, as much as possible, face that hole inside you that would want another person to fill it, and go into that, then the more that you face that and the more that you go into that, the less you'll want from somebody else, which means that you don't need another person in the same way. You don't need them to make you feel okay, because you know how to make yourself feel okay, or you don't even think it's their responsibility to make you feel okay, you know? It's like when you see in the Hollywood movies, you know, it's like, I'm going to make you happy for the rest of your life. You know, whenever I see that, I'm like, oh my God, it's a recipe for disaster. On both sides, because if, you know, you think you can make somebody else happy, well, that's impossible. And then if you also believe it from the other side and go, yeah, okay, well, they said they were going to make me happy, so great, I don't have to bother about that. That's just not going to go well. But I think in the spiritual life, there is, I said this before, there is a willingness to go into aloneness, that I don't think is there if you're not drawn to it. You know, if you're not drawn to this kind of life, you know, then, you know, you probably won't think about it too much. And then when your partner dies, you'll be really upset. And, you know, like the way it's kind of represented in Hollywood, you know, if your partner has an affair and you get divorced, you'll be bereft and so on, you know. But if you're interested in this, if you're drawn to this kind of stuff, then it's almost like you go through all that beforehand. So you sort of look into these spaces in yourself that you want other people to fill, and you deal with them. And the more you do that, the less you want from the other person. That's not to say you don't get attached. It's just part of our makeup to get attached to people. That's why when people die who are close to us, we cry. And that's all fine. You know, it's part of our makeup to be attached. But that's a different thing to, you know, wanting and expecting people to fill holes for you, to take care of your emotional needs, basically do the heavy lifting for you. So when you don't have that, when you're willing to kind of to look into your aloneness, the aloneness of your experience, when you're willing to look into that, then you can be a lot easier with people, and you can be, you don't expect things from them. And because you don't expect things from them, you can just be delighted by the moment, you know? I mean, you could have had a big argument with somebody, or they could have done this terrible thing on you. And they're, you know, 90% a nice person, and they've got this 10% that's just abominable. And you happen to just get dealt, you know, you just got beat up by the 10%. And what it means is then that, you know, if they just start being delightful again, then you can just enjoy that, you know, in a way that you wouldn't have if you hadn't gone into the aloneness and the, you know, that kind of hermit mentality I was talking about. I hope that helps. Okay, they're saying brilliant, right on, thank you. And I'd love to hear about your share out the young adults and what a different experience they're having. I appreciate the feedback. Okay, great. Yeah, so what I was saying about was kids. There's kids at the moment who've gone through this current pandemic thing. And it's just been on my mind about how how different their experience will be. Like there's a generational thing. There's a thing that happens as you get older, in my experience. I haven't experienced it too much myself, but I've observed it in people who are of a similar age to me. And again, it's people who are not that interested in consciousness and growth and spirituality and that kind of thing. And that's fair enough. But it's quite easy to become rigid and kind of think, you know, it's like the cliche of like, oh, back in my day, we didn't used to do that, and things were a lot better when I was younger and all that kind of thing, which is complete bullshit as far as I can see, because, you know, particularly if it's someone my age, I'm like, you know, they're going, oh, things were great when I was a kid. You know, like you see these things where people are going, oh, yeah, we grew up, we could go and roam the streets and play in gangs and do all this stuff that the kids can't do now, you know, and it's like, I remember what it was like, you know, it wasn't great. You know, it's like, yeah, you could roam in the streets all day, and then you come home at night and your parents would beat you, you know. I'm not saying my parents beat me, but like just slapping children, that was just commonplace back then, you know. Like I was only thinking about it the other day. In primary school, okay, in Ireland, they've got primary school and secondary school. Primary school is like from age 4 to 12. So young kids. Every teacher in the school I went to had what was called a leather, okay? And leather was literally what it says. It's a strip of leather, okay? They each had a different one as well. And it was for the express purpose of slapping kids on the hand, right? That's how just normal that kind of behavior was when I was growing up, you know. So yeah, when people talk about, you know, oh, things were better when I was a kid, no, they weren't. They're not, definitely weren't. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked on my corporal punishment. Was that corporal punishment? No. Anyway, you know, hitting kids. So it's like kind of seems to be part of getting older, is that there is a space to become rigid and to think that the current generation are so much more inferior than the generation that went beforehand. You know, so for me, you know, like I'm 57, right? So when I hear a 40-year-old going, oh my God, the kids today, they just, I find it so funny, because it's like, man, you're only 40, you know, like you were a kid not that long ago, and now you're going on about all the kids, you know. Or when people are nostalgic about the 90s or the 2000s, I'm like, how could you be nostalgic for that? Because it's so recent, you know. So one of the challenges of getting older, particularly if you're in a spiritual life and conscious, is to stay with the child inside you, is to stay with the sense of wonder and to stay supple like a child, you know, not in your body. I mean, yeah, in your body, of course, that's a good thing to do, but more importantly, inside, to be fresh and new, and to be honest about, you know, that things are getting better all the time. You know, they're not getting worse, they're getting better. I mean, statistically, they are getting better. You have, you know, there's so many statistics on, you know, child mortality and the balance, you know, of wages between men and women. It's not there yet, but it's better than it was, and all the time it's getting better. Even though the media would like you to think that, you know, the wars are worse, there's a lot less war than there used to be, and there's a lot less starvation, and everything is improving. Okay, and each generation, you know, is better. So there's that process as well. But then we've also had this, you know, and I've been saying this since, you know, I started doing these Zoom groups, of like, there's a speeding up of consciousness going on. And one of the aspects of that is the kids at the moment, I think. Like when the lockdowns and the pandemic started, I was, you know, it seemed to me like it's enforced meditation worldwide in a way, or Western worldwide anyway. Everyone had to go into a little meditation retreat for whatever period of time. And I thought, well, there's going to be great things are going to come out of this. There'll be, you know, we'll hear in 10 years' time, oh, when did you start that charity? Oh, well, it all happened when COVID hit, you know. I had time to think and reassess my life, you know. And that is starting to come out a little bit now. But what I am very keenly aware of at the moment is that the children and young adults, but particularly children who are going through this, are going to have a very, very special childhood. Because, you know, for the previous decades, it was pretty much the same, you know. It got a bit worse in the last maybe 10 years. Mom and dad were both going to work, you know, it wasn't, you know, both, you didn't have one parent at home. But this last year will have been very powerful for those kids, because, you know, from lots of different angles. So on the sort of not so great side of things, it would have been like, wow, mommy and daddy are worried, they are fearful, and they are, you know, I'm experiencing mommy and daddy in a way. Oh, the thing is frozen. I hope you can still hear me. They are experiencing mommy and daddy in a way that they haven't experienced them before. Meaning, you know, daddy stopped getting dressed. You know, he's kind of in the tracksuit all the time, and so is mommy. You know, and we're not going out much, and they're watching a lot of telly, and they're drinking a lot, or that, you know, there's all that going on. But then, on the positive side, they'll be witnessing the dawning change in mommy and daddy. You know, they'll be witnessing mommy and daddy going, what were we doing before this? We're just, you know, we're having picnics in the back garden now. You know, I'm getting to see my kids. We're more of a family. We do more family things now than we ever did. And, you know, it's that, why didn't I do this before, you know? So the kids are seeing all that. They're seeing their parents transform in front of them. And they are getting a level of attention from their parents that they wouldn't have been getting before. And they are, you know, good and bad. They're getting to see mommy and daddy having trouble with the homework and all that sort of thing as well. But I think that part of this raising in consciousness, it's almost like, it feels like an incubator for consciousness with these current children that are, you know, alive at the moment and going through this with their parents. I think they will be changed profoundly by this whole whole experience. I mean, I can't really imagine how it's gonna how that's going to play out, but I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful, because already the kids were pretty amazing. You know, like my daughter's 27. If I talk to her, the sort of stuff she thinks about and has dealt with is always amazing to me. And from her friends, you know, seeing what her friends talk about, and you know, young people like Greta Thunberg and Boys and Slat, you know, the young fella who is cleaning up the plastic out of the ocean. He's invented this thing. Amazing young people doing amazing things, you know. So yeah, that's been, I've been thinking about that, or it's been coming up. Anybody got any questions or concerns about that, or not, you know, comments or anything they want to say about that? All right. Okay. So I think we will wrap it up there then for tonight. Thanks very much for coming along to Zoom group, and see you next week for some more.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. It was so interesting.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.